we're back.
So we're back. And I believe now is you, Lon.
Yes, and I probably had the most boring movie of everyone, but I
wouldn't say that.
I actually picked it up because I didn't really know what it was, but I was going to say that this is a movie called Adrienne. It's a documentary about an actress I love called Adrienne Shelly.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see it.
Yeah.
Look it up.
Hi, it's me, Adrienne.
Somebody's agreed to let me make a movie again that never fails to surprise me and delight me.
She craved having her voice heard and her vision be out there.
From when she was 5 years old, when she was in kindergarten, she always stood out. It was always Adrienne.
It happened quickly. In no time, she was the star of this indie cult film.
I'm sitting in a diner, freaked beyond belief. What have we learned here? Write it and direct it yourself.
She really knew what she wanted. She had such a clear idea of it.
Come in, you're rushing.
Okay, I messed it up a little bit.
It's fine, I don't care.
Her greatest joy was that child.
She was the happiest I'd ever seen her. I went to bed that night the luckiest guy alive. By the next night, I was living the worst nightmare imaginable.
My phone rings, and you said, Brian, get up here. Adrienne's dead.
That's her here.
Don't be afraid of dying, be afraid of never living.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's go.
Okay, Adrienne is a documentary about the actress Adrienne Shelly. Now, I will tell you this. I was a big fan when I first saw a movie. I worked at a video store, and we happened to get a video trailer or a complimentary copy of a movie called The Unbelievable Truth by Hal Hartley. And I just took it home and watched it, and I was so shocked how much I enjoyed it. I became a huge Hal Hartley fan, and Adrienne Shelly, Robert Burke were the stars in it. Even people like Edie Falco has a small role in it. And, Robert Burke and Edie Falco went on to actually do more stuff, but Adrienne Shelly really didn't do too many, in my opinion, mainstream movies, because I did become a fan. So their follow-up movie, Trust, that nailed it for me. I thought that was, I was just telling these guys here, that was one of my favorite movies of the 90s. That's in my top 10 of favorite films, period, of the 90s. And we're talking, that's the decade that Delicatessen came out.
Diner.
Diner was the 80s. But no, I'm trying to think of all.
What movies that would have impressed you back in the 90s?
Yeah, and so, but it also led me to watch more of these independent films. That's why I got into people like Whit Stillman. I don't know if you know him, or Kevin Smith with Clerks.
Love Clerks.
That's what I mean. These were sort of my Clerks is in my top 10 of best favorite 90s movies. So I was sort of surprised that her husband decided to do a documentary about her life. And I thought, oh, good, I get to see about her career. But it was basically centered around her tragic death, which I don't know if a lot. Well, actually, my favorite scene in the movie is something I never knew. I did not know that her last movie, which she wrote and directed and starred in, or was, a supporting character, but was Waitress. Yeah. I had no idea it was a Broadway musical.
Didn't she write it?
She wrote it.
Yeah. She wrote, directed it.
Yeah.
Starred in it and everything. And
have you seen Waitress?
Oh, I have seen Waitress. Oh, yeah. Oh, I had to see that but the thing is that she had been killed before Waitress came out. And that's sort of what they cover. But I was surprised. I didn't realize, for example, it was a Broadway musical. Oh, yeah. So there was a sequence when people were asking, oh, do you know who Adrienne Shelly is, right? The people in line waiting for, and they said, no. And I thought, of course, because she really wasn't, in my opinion, a big actress. But if you watched independent films, you knew who she was. So this was sort of a weird kind of movie, a heartbreaking movie for me, because also following the murder case, I sort of knew everything that happened. So everything in the movie wasn't quite new to me, but the only thing I had to say was, for example, to see her daughter grow up and to see that aspect. Because I'll say this right now, her mother being interviewed, there are certain, I'm trying to remember when it was, but her mother, when I heard her voice, it's like, oh, that's Adrienne Shelly. When her daughter's narrating this stuff, I said, oh my God, that's her voice.
She sounds just like
You
the mother.
can hear it. So it's like, these people are family. You know immediately. I think the mother was talking about at one point about her leaving college, and going to be in the movies. That it's like, I can hear Adrienne Shelly's voice in her mother's voice, and it's so strange to hear it in her daughter's voice. I thought, see, that connection's always going to be there. But she was an independent actress that I did admire. And then after the Hal Hartley movies, of course, Hollywood's calling for her, thinking, oh, she's sort of a darling of these independent films. Let's get her to make mainstream films. Of course, they're not really that good. I mean, I think I saw Big Girls Don't Cry, something called Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, and then something called Hexed. Now, as much as I liked her in these movies, I was a fan of hers. It's like, oh no. In fact, Claudia Christian and Air Gross and her were in this movie called Hex. And I thought, here are these three sort of independent actresses or actors I really enjoy. And this movie really sucked. It's like, oh my God. And I can't fault the actors. They were really doing their best to be funny because it's a comedy. But it's like, okay. So I almost sort of, after that, I sort of gave up on Adrienne Shelly. I just thought, okay, I'm not going to see anything, except Hal Hartley then did a film short where she and Parker Posey play these two rollerblading fairies in it. And again, it hooked me again. It's like, there they are. It's like I can understand when they said she was Hal Hartley's muse. She was perfect for his movies. She really showed such great potential as an actress. But I like the fact that in this documentary, she talks about how much she learned from Hal Hartley to really get what you want. And apparently, when you watch this documentary, that's what everyone says about her. She sort of knew what she wanted when they talked to her friends, her family, because her husband did produce this movie.
Is he? Do you know anything about him? Is he?
I am not. I know he was a filmmaker.
Oh,
for
he was a
example.
filmmaker.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah.
that is part of it. That Ostroy, if I'm not mistaken, his name.
Yes.
So he was sort of involved with that kind of stuff.
Okay.
In fact, that's one of the great sequences I did love in this, when he talks to a friend, where he says he's telling a friend, it's like, they, oddly enough, they met online, and he says, he tells his friend something about he's dating Adrienne Shelly, and his friend's saying, like the actress Adrienne Shelly? And he goes, like the Hal Hartley Adrienne Shelly? And I sort of laugh because I'm getting it completely. It's like, because the one thing that I think she always had, and it's the one thing I sort of admired her for, I thought, here is this very attractive young lady, and she did look very young. Even in her 40s, she still looked like she was in her 20s.
She had great hair.
Well, she did. She had everything. I think that was going for her. And she was always sort of this sex. And yet I said, she's never done a nude scene. And I thought, good for her. She obviously doesn't want to, because that's one of the characteristics. She doesn't want to pretend. Even though in Hold Me, Thrill Me, what?
Harvey Weinstein wanted her to do
Well,
that.
exactly. And the one, and I think that was I can't even remember which movie that was, but you're right, exactly. They said they wanted her to do a nude scene. And she was in movies where there were nude scenes. But the thing is, like, no, she didn't have to do that. And I thought, good, I'm glad you don't have to do that. Here's this attractive young woman I'm really admiring. I just kept thinking, as an actress, here's somebody who's in an independent film, who's really starting off in a great career, comes to Hollywood, and is being in all these lousy movies, in my opinion. She's still fine for what she's doing, but these movies are not great movies at all. So when she started directing, that's when I started getting interested. Well, that's the thing. She sort of, I think, wanted to create roles for herself. But the thing is, then I never did see the movie she directed, the first one, Sudden Manhattan, because it hardly got released. It was so hard to see. So I never saw that. But then, of course, the murder comes along. This actress was tragically murdered. The weirdness of that killing, though, because at first it was reported that she committed suicide.
Yes.
And this is covered, and this in the documentary, and that was sort of like the saddest. I just remember I thought, here's this woman who's trying to work on movies and do all this, and she commits suicide. I thought, why? In fact, I also knew that she had got married, and she talked about being a mother. which was like the center of her career. So when her husband which I love, they show this in the or mentioned in the documentary, how he pesters the police. Like, no, she would never commit suicide. And then, of course, it was revealed, which again made the news, that it wasn't suicide, that they arrested somebody who had killed her. And this is all covered in the documentary. Unfortunately for me, I was really hoping to see a movie about Adrienne Shelly and not about all this, because her death is sort of like the crux, I think, of this movie. But the biggest crux of the movie, I think, is with grief. It's how to deal with grief, because you are seeing it from her daughter, who, was, I think, 2 years old, when she passed away. And now she's 13 years later. She's 15 or something. She's a teenager. You're hearing it from her mother, who loved her dearly, and her husband now. And it's sort of, and actually, I have to take it back, because it's also people who are friends of hers that knew her as well. And that's sort of how I had to watch the movie, because I was sort of disappointed, because I just wanted to know more about Adrienne Shelly, and I wasn't sort of getting it. So I don't know what I wanted from this movie, except that I truly
This was not the movie you
enjoyed
wanted.
enjoyed her movies with Hal Hartley.
Right.
So to be quite honest, I would say this it's a fascinating documentary because of her life and basically the tragedy of her death. But if you want to see a movie about grief, this is definitely one that really centers on it, because it also, as I mentioned earlier, I said, the movies this week were sort of awkward to watch, because Power of the Dog was sort of awkward for me. The Night Comes for Us was really awkward for me to watch. And there is a sequence, which I have to admit might have been the crux of the reason, is when her husband actually goes to interview the person who killed her. I had such a difficult time watching that, because it's like, this is really too awkward. This is like too personal kind of thing.
That's the only time I woke up. Went, oh, finally, we're getting to the point.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
But to be quite honest, I can't express enough how much Adrienne Shelly meant to me. I will toast to her and say, thank you for what you've done in your career, only because as an actress, I really did admire you.
Cool.
Okay.
Patty.
Well, I had a whole different perspective on this. I had no idea who she was, right?
Yeah.
Though I did see the movie Waitress, but I really didn't know who she was. And so I thought this movie was going to be more about the investigation of her murder / suicide, which turned into murder. But it's really about the husband not being able to let go. That's what I kept getting.
Very much so.
And I kind of didn't like what he was putting his daughter through. It was like he wanted someone to come into his sorrow. And I didn't like that either. And at literally 1 hour and 10 minutes, it started getting repetitive, as I said. And then, boom, he goes to see the killer, and then I kind of came to again, right? Because he couldn't let go. And even 13 years later, he can't let go, which I understand so about the grief part.
Right.
But I didn't like what he put the daughter through. He was asking her questions you shouldn't ask a 13-year-old.
Who basically didn't know her mother.
Right.
Yeah. But it was more his grief. Because when it gets repetitive to me, that means that's where it should stop. But I loved Waitress.
Oh, did you? Oh, good.
Yeah. But I like indie movies, but I don't like those kind of indie movies.
What do you mean with those kind of?
She likes the ones that they go and they kill them.
That's not true. I like any good story.
Right.
I love Power of the Dog.
No.
Right.
Oh
That's
no, you're
no
talking
indie
about
movie.
you're
There's
talking about the documentary. Right.
Yeah, see, this is
Okay,
a documentary,
Right.
but to me, it was more showing how the husband.
Oh no, it's definitely more centered around the husband, because,
Right.
like I said, he's directing it. So it's like I said, that's why I think it had to do more with grief than actually her
I
life.
had a very similar reaction to you. In fact, my thing is I found this film very disturbing, actually.
Oh.
I was actually reluctant. It's supposed to be an homage to Adrienne Shelly. However, I felt this was more about the anger of Andy Ostroy.
Yeah.
And it wasn't
And grief.
I didn't feel grief. I found the way that he went out of his grief is he got angry. In other words, she wasn't suicidal.
Right.
And that became his crusade. It's
Well,
like
even we knew she wasn't suicidal.
So no, what I mean is his anger got him out of his grief.
Right.
And then he stayed with it. And that was problematic for me.
But I love documentaries.
But one thing I really got when I was thinking about, how about these big decisions in your life, like who you're going to marry, where you're going to go to school, how many children do you want, all those things you think are the things that define your life. What I got from this movie, but actually sometimes the unexpected, out of the blue situations where you must make immediate split-second decisions, and they both, the killer and her, both made split-second decisions. When she chased him down the hall, and said
it could have
police,
ended so differently.
And that's all he understood was police, because he doesn't speak English, right? And so, I mean, all the decisions that were made that could have been, and it's really those things that really, really can set your life on a whole different trajectory. You think it's these really laid out laborious, no, it's the things you do
immediately.
Yeah, can just impact
it was a
your life.
senseless murder. That's the thing.
Well, and the thing that added a weirdness to me too was the fact that he was an illegal immigrant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was another thing.
Well, it was obviously...
Why?
Because of the whole Trump going on about that stuff, and it's like, oh,
this is
that's
way before Trump.
Oh no, it's still way before Trump. But see, it's still sort of putting another voice to that.
Well,
it's like,
somebody
killed somebody in my family. I don't care where they're from.
Here's the
no,
thing.
exactly. I agree. Yeah.
I actually felt sympathy. I actually could see what happened.
Oh no, you see the sympathy in when he explains why or what he
happened.
was doing.
What happened?
Right. Right, because he needed money to send back.
He made a split-second decision. Of course, he was on a bad course anyways, because he'd been doing this. This was bound to happen, but nobody ever sees that.
No.
There's going to be an incident, but it's kind of like sometimes you just got to let it go. You know what I mean? It's like it's only things.
Yeah.
It's only money. Let it go.
Yeah.
I understand. It was about power. It was about not understanding. It was like I just saw it really, really clearly, and I thought it made it very clear. I thought that it was overkill to go to the no pun intended to the. I didn't quite understand why the guy, the guy who killed her, allowed himself to be photographed and allowed that to happen.
If something had happened, I mean, I don't know why the guy went when he said maybe 3 sentences, not the killer, the father.
Yes, I totally get that. I was like, I thought that he was angry.
He needed to see him. I get that.
He wanted to know what happened. I get that.
Yeah. But when he got there, it was like nothing.
I just don't know. I just had a problem with the guy. It seemed to me he was angry. The guy, I felt, it's like, leave your daughter alone. She doesn't even know her mother. You're just making her into... I wanted to actually know a lot more about Adrienne
no, exactly.
Shelly.
That's why I said I was hoping it's more about her.
Not some idealized goddess, Adrienne, because she was actually very funny. And I actually wrote that I thought it may be a New York thing.
Right.
When he was talking her comedy, when you get the tragic and you make it funny. Because that was
very, very much the New York thing.
Yeah. And it kind of reminded me of Woody Allen.
Exactly,
you know what
yes.
I mean? It was like, it's maybe New York. It was like, I would have liked to see more of her work and where she was going, but I don't need to see her as this goddess. She had to do those roles because that's what Hollywood puts you in as a young, attractive woman. She didn't really get a chance, and she was starting to get there. She was starting to do it.
But she wanted
because she's making her own movies.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
So this was a means to the end. She took anything
to
make
loved
money.
What she said. She said she went, and I love she did not victimize herself. She went, she was like, I saying about being a woman and Hollywood and getting stuff done is rough. And then she went, you know what? No. Being anybody trying to get something
It's just
done
hard.
is
Exactly.
hard
It's
for
just
everyone.
hard.
I
And
love that.
And I thoroughly agree. That's the
Yes.
one thing I thought, you know what?
Yes.
Good. She saw it. It has nothing to do with being a woman.
No.
It has just to do how tough this business is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I got. And that's what I liked. I had a problem with him. I
Yeah.
was like, you
Oh,
know what? You
interesting.
need to
Okay.
move on.
Yeah.
You need to move on. Leave your daughter,
Daughter
alone.
alone.
Because she doesn't even know this lady.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And she doesn't know her. And
He's
it's-
trying to get reactions out of her that he
Yeah,
feels.
that
See,
he-
and it's funny for me. I didn't sort of feel that way only because I will say this, that for me, it's like, okay, when you lose, again, something I have no idea how people will react.
Knock on wood.
Exactly. And I'm thankful for that. But just to be that young, not really know who your mother is, and yet everyone will come up to you. It's like, oh, your mother. Like, if I ever met her, it's like, I loved your mother in these movies. I became a fan of her only because I started watching these Hal Hartley movies. And it's not like I know her. And yet, like celebrity is, right? You think you know
But
her.
remember,
don't
she's
know
seeing
that
her
that's-
as a mother, not as an actress,
Right.
not as a director.
And I don't know if that's actually even very good. I mean, if somebody came up to me and tell me your mother was great, I would like, especially being like
Because-
15, I'd be like,
right.
no, she's not.
Because-
You know, I said,
well,
if she was alive
yeah.
now, you'd be saying, I hate you.
Well, exactly. Well, that's the funny part, because another thing that I did like was when Kerry Russell was telling her the story about, doing the end up where she has to carry her, right? And said, oh, yeah, no, if your mother was out of sight, you started fussing and crying. So your mother had to hide behind bushes. So you saw her. And I thought, see, it's stories like that. I thought, oh, good. I'm glad she got to hear that from these kind of people,
Yeah, I was concerned about the daughter. It's like,
Yeah. You get a protective feeling
and
about
you know
the
what?
daughter.
And also I thought it was strange. I've seen people in very, very long relationships where a partner is gone, right? And I thought his reaction, they really, been together, 3 years?
Not that
longer
long.
than that.
No.
not that long. But don't forget, they met online too. Exactly.
Yeah, like 3. It was almost like he was upset about what he could have had, but he didn't have. He never
Didn't
got
got
to
it.
have it.
Right.
Right. If he would have had it, I think his
His way of dealing with it.
would have been different.
Right.
Yeah.
It was almost like I almost had it.
Oh.
My,
God damn it, you died.
My Bitcoin almost went up to 250, but it didn't. And it's like what I could have had. I didn't have.
George.
Well, see if I can remember my points because you made them all for me.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought the movie. To me, the movie seemed to be, even though it was a documentary about her, it almost seemed like a documentary about him.
Yes. No,
What
very
he
much
went
so.
through. And that means, and I get it, he's angry, and he's carrying that anger. I mean, he's just he cannot, and like the interviews, with the daughter, I personally thought he was trying to push his daughter into
Feeling
and being emotional. He wanted her to cry.
Yeah.
But she doesn't know her mother, so she's kind of tough actually.
Yeah.
So she's like, oh.
Well, he's so emotional. She's gone the other
Well,
way.
Her mother was tough, and I think she's
Yeah.
a lot like her mother.
Yeah. So in the thing about and like you said, the movie to me shows about how 1 second split decision can change your life. I was thinking of Shawshank Redemption.
Well, that's the saying, not just change your life, but change
Everybody's life.
other
Everyone
people
else.
around you. Yeah.
And I thought the killer, the reason they caught him because he's very religious too, and I have to say this about the detectives: they have eye for detail.
Yeah.
And like when we watch mystery shows, and one thing I told Susie all the time is like, this guy's he noticed that tiny little thing. The reason the killer gets caught because the detective notices something. It's very minute, but they just have eye for detail.
She
and I give
noticed
them
the
that.
sawdust or
Yes.
the like.
Yeah.
Well, no.
By
Most
the door.
importantly, there was the footprint.
The footprint, yeah.
That's
which
what
is-
I said.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then,
In the bathtub.
So that it's a couple of things that happened that were able to make them
Connection.
make the connection, allow them to make the connection. I thought the movie, I mean, it's really, really depressing. I had no idea who she was. I saw the movie Waitress. I
Yeah,
love
I
the movie.
didn't know who she was either.
Very clever. She actually had writing.
Okay, I'm gonna do Trust next time.
Okay.
Oh God, please don't.
So I thought she.
No, it's okay. We'll learn.
I
about
liked
her.
Waitress, but I never knew. I knew Waitress.
Yeah.
but-
No. Exactly. That's what I'm
Sorry,
saying.
for
No.
interrupting.
Oh, sorry. But oh shoot, now I'm spacing out. Actually, she, you know, you know, New York, the writers she reminded me of Woody Allen. But this is the other. There's an actress now. She writes. She wrote Lady Bird, but she did Lola Against the World.
Mm-hmm.
She kind of kept reminding me of her too. Like she's writes all this in New York,
Right.
writes all this stuff.
Yeah.
And also, she reminds me a little bit of Bjork for some reason. Like, you know,
No, you kept saying that.
feisty and you know, yeah, she's cute, young, you know.
Oh, and
feisty.
seems like unassuming, kind of like shy and quiet.
Yeah, but
kind of
she's
type,
really
right? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, but she's like you know, she's a firecracker.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
Bjork.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I found the movies, the movie, the
Documentary.
It was pretty sad, and I thought that he was born, like I said, born about him. He's angry, and he's trying to, you know, it's more of him flashing out, you know, that through his system.
Mm-hmm.
You'll probably have an Adrienne part 2.
No, I hope not.
Oh no,
Because
I'm not watching.
and
I'm
I'll
not
tell you
watching
who would do it more would be her daughter. I want a real version of Adrienne. I want a real version of the woman that's not some goddess.
Well, that's what sort of disappointed me, like I said, because I really because I'm so hooked on her and the Hal Hartley thing, I really want to know about what her experience was like working and as an actress and doing this, because you don't really know much about her personality, except, again, how much she loved her family and what the people are saying about her.
But here's another thing too. You know, like something like that happens and you want to move on. You don't live, you remember it, at least in the past, you move on. I think the reason that this thing kept going was because, you know that happens to her, but they couldn't move on because suddenly Waitress becomes huge.
Yes.
And now you keep her.
Well, that was I'll never forget
cancer.
that, because that's when I was working at Nielsen, and we're talking about movies coming out, and this is going to be a wide release for independent film, which is unusual. But even, I'll never forget this, the CEO had mentioned to me, he said, "Oh, isn't it such a tragic story?" And then that's what I said, yeah, because I literally remember seeing her first film that she was in and just glommed onto that, and seeing her second film, which I loved. So I was a fan of hers. And yet, after
We
a
could
certain
tell
time,
that, Lon.
yeah.
I was going to say, I wasn't
that,
much of a fan of her as an actress from what I saw.
No, me
But I
either.
was definitely a fan of her for her writing, the things he showed us that she was always writing and had these ideas.
Right.
And the ideas were always very funny. Yeah, in a New York way.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? So I was like, oh, I'd like to see more of what she did. And she obviously would have been a great director kind of person.
The potential you could see
Yes.
after Waitress, in my opinion.
Well,
but
not
also-
only that, she
yeah.
didn't take the lead role.
Yeah, but also
I'm not an actress. The actress always would take the lead role.
But like I said, you wanna then move on from something, and then it becomes huge, and it stops you from moving on from it, because now it keeps growing, so it keeps the memory going. And also a Broadway musical, so it just won't stop. So you cannot move on from it, because it's a constant reminder. And I feel that's what the husband felt.
Let's grade it.
Okay.
And after that, I want to show that wonderful present we got.
Oh, sure, yes.
After that.
Okay, so let's see. It was you.
6.
Oh, wow. That's higher than me. That's higher than me.
I'm going to give it a 7. I'm giving it a 7 because actually it kind of made me think a lot. Yeah, I didn't like the movie, but it made me think a lot. So I always like that in a movie.
Yeah, it's hard to grade documentaries because it's not a movie. So, but if the documentary were a bit more about her and really embrace what she's done, I would have given it her.
It would have been higher.
But it felt to me like it was about him. So I'll give it a 7.
Oh, wow. I gave it a 5 because I agree, because that was the one thing I was really hoping it was going to be about her life. And to be quite honest, I just knew that it was going to probably be more about her death.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I don't think he meant it to be that way. I just.
Well, no, I think it's sort of. You're right.
Dominated
I think it's sort of
his
exactly.
feeling. Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me do this first. Okay, you want to?
All right.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
No. We got this for a Christmas gift. Which I am in at, George? Which camera?
Actually, you're good there. Yeah.
Where?
Where you are?
This one. Yeah.
Oh. See it? What the flicks? Thank you, Jennifer Ayers.
Thank you. That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, it's great.
Almost Jesse.
Or is it Jesse?
I think it's Jesse. It's Jesse.
Jesse Shigarian.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it was Jesse.
Okay, speaking of
Thank you, babe.
Okay, so that ends our show. Remember to like us and subscribe. You can hear the audio of this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and Amazon Music. You can see this video and all our videos on YouTube and Twitch. Look for What the Flicks Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Not Facebook because we're banned. We're bad. We're evil. We're naughty.
We're bad girls.
We're naughty.
Naughty girls.
Anyways, and so look for What the Flicks Podcast. And you can email us at whattheflickspodcast@gmail.com. And so until next time, hasta luego.
Bye-bye.